Good evening and welcome. I'm Andrew Friedson. I have the privilege and honor to represent District 1 on the Montgomery County Council. We are here tonight for a town hall style community conversation, which we're going to focus specifically on public safety, an issue that is top of mind for many of our residents. We're hearing from lots of you about concerns of what's happening in our community and in communities across the county and frankly the region and beyond. And so we have asked Chief Jones and Commander Gagen to join us, which we really appreciate. Commander Sean Gagen, the 2nd District Commander based out of Bethesda, and Chief Jones, who oversees our entire Montgomery County Police Department. Really appreciate them taking the time. This is going to run for an hour till 8 o'clock. We want to respect their time. So everyone knows District 1 runs along the Potomac River from the DC line to the Frederick County line. We're very appreciative that you've come to join us and know that this is an important topic and an important issue that we're all concerned about, and that's why we're here. I just want to take a minute to go over the format for this evening before I turn it over to our police chief, Marcus Jones, and Commander Sean Gagen from the 2nd District. After they make their remarks, Cindy Gibson, my chief of staff, who you can see here on your screen, will be moderating the questions that you can put into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you ask your question anonymously, which is totally fine, if you'd prefer, we'll read the question aloud for you. And if you've joined a Friday with Friedson in the past, the Q&A function is very similar to how it works in that format. If you put your name on your question, once we get to it, we will call on you. Cindy specifically will call on you, and our team will bring you into the speaker mode so that you can ask your question to Chief Jones, Commander Gagen, and me yourself. So please be patient with us. We're going to try to get through as many questions as we have time for here live. If we don't get to your question here tonight, we have a big turnout, which we very much appreciate, or if it's very specific in nature and needs to be handled offline on a one-on-one basis, please reach out to our office. My email is councilmember.friedson@montgomerycountymd.gov, and my team and I will be happy to assist you. We'll work directly with Chief Jones, Commander Gagen, the police department, to make sure that we're answering thoroughly. So once again, I just really appreciate everybody joining us this evening. I'm very grateful to Chief Jones and Commander Gagen for taking time out of your busy schedules with everything going on to join us, and thank Commander Gagen as well, who joined us for an in-person town hall community conversation where we focused on public safety as well back on April 7th. So this is the latest in a series of efforts that we're trying to work together with our police department and with the 2nd District in particular, to make sure you're aware of how to keep our community safe and to make sure that we're building the relationship between our residents and our police department. So thank you very much for joining us. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chief Jones.
So thank you, Councilmember Friedson, and good evening to everyone. And thank you for allowing us to share a few comments and be here to answer your questions your concerns that you have about public safety in District 1. It's, over the past few months, there have been several significant issues, I'm sure, that has raised concerns. There is public safety concerns throughout the county. Every council district or police district is not necessarily has the same exact problems, but they are very similar in nature. And this is why it's vitally important for us as a police department to share information, not only internally within our own ranks, but also to be able to share information regionally, because we know that we have crimes that are occurring or things that are impacting public safety that are occurring across district lines. When I say that, state lines. It's also occurring in the District of Columbia. It's occurring in Virginia, as well as occurring in our neighboring Prince George's County and other neighboring jurisdictions. So therefore, it is vitally important for us as we work towards really providing and doing our very best to prevent crime, and to be really to try to be ahead of that in many different ways. We also, when we're trying to solve crimes and work for solutions and to find the culprits that are involved in this, I think it's vitally important for us to be able to share that information. And we are. We have developed several different working groups or task force to focus on different types of crimes that occur, such as our carjacking task force. We've had some significant increases in carjackings over the past year or two. And those are really has caused a lot of concern in the community, and rightfully so. And so we want to be able to share, again, safety tips as well. I'm sure Commander Gagen would have a list of those things, or we can share those tonight to make sure that people are really really aware of your surroundings, no matter whether you're at home or whether you are out and about in Montgomery County or in the Washington, D.C., anywhere you may go for that matter. I think these are really good tips for us to really stay aware of. So again, you know, there have been lots of discussions as well about our personnel, our rank and file, and the number of officers that we have. And I wanted to really try to make sure that people understand that one of my top priority as the chief of police will all be is to basically make sure that each police district has a sufficient amount of number of officers who can respond to calls for service. Those are your officers who are your patrol officers, who are the first responders there for emergencies or for normal calls for service. That is the priority, to be able to answer to our emergency 911 center, whether it's a 911 call or it's a regular call for service, to have those resources available to the best of our ability. We have had some challenges, but I will tell you that we work very hard to overcome those challenges and provide the resources necessary as we deal with these different issues that are occurring not only in the District 1 area, but also under the 2nd District Police Station, but also all the other police districts as well. Again, it's because understanding that a lot of individuals, there are no boundaries. There's no stopping at any district line because they believe that they're now in a new police district, or in fact, in another state or another area, such as the District of Columbia. That doesn't really matter to individuals that deal with that. So I just wanted to make that perfectly clear that we are committed in that perspective. We're going to make sure that we have officers that will be responding in timely manners. These are things that we talk about really on a weekly basis. We talk about it also, how we look at our response times and how we can always improve upon that. So these are things that are important to us. So I look forward to answering your questions. And I think at this point, I'll just pass the baton over to Commander Gagen and allow him to have a few words.
Thank you very much, Chief Jones and Councilmember Friedson. Thank you for the invitation to be here tonight. I want to thank everybody that's taking time out of their busy lives to join us as well. It's obviously an incredibly important topic when we're talking about public safety, and especially when we're talking about public safety and how it impacts our community. So I'm very happy to be here tonight with everybody. I typically kind of sometimes try to overwhelm people with a lot of information and data, and I sometimes overdo those types of things. So tonight I'm going to take a little step backward, and I really kind of want this to be more of an opportunity for people to ask questions that are important to them, as opposed to me just presenting information that I think is important, or that I think is important. But I will just try to set the stage just quickly with what is some things that have been happening over the course of the year to date. From a crime standpoint, and I think statistics are important, but I also think we have some information that can help us, one, in providing some crime prevention information, but also talking a little bit about some of the steps that we're taking with our regional partners to try to address those types of crimes as well. So we talk about the second district, and as I said, I'm not going to go too deep into the woods here, but our numbers are fairly consistent from where they were last year in 2021. We started to see kind of a little bit more of a normalization, so to speak, from take out the COVID year, that first year where everybody was locked at home. So we started to kind of see the numbers start to go up. And Chief Jones just touched on a little bit about, we started to see some violent crimes such as carjackings and those types of things that started to kind of make their way into the county, and more importantly, throughout the region. So, as I said, our numbers in the second district here, which makes up Kensington, Bethesda, Chevy Chase, Friendship Heights, Glen Echo, North Bethesda, and part of Potomac, just so you have an idea of what makes up the second police district. But the big number that's stepping out, like it's jumping out of me for where I put my resources is going towards our burglary numbers. Our burglary numbers are up; they're up countywide. It's a regional issue. We're dealing with a lot of different trends that we're working with our partners all throughout the region. Fortunately, I have some very excellent detectives and investigators, as well as patrol officers that have partnerships with other agencies, and they're sharing information, and that's led us to a lot of successes. And we just recently had one where we had a couple individuals who were targeting residences and stealing cars as part of that. And fortunately, a couple of my officers that were assigned to a detail were able to make an arrest, and this one gained some media attention because the officers were shot at during the course of the arrest and pursuit that involved that situation. So it's been a little bit of a battle trying to make sure that, hey, look, I'm utilizing my resources effectively, but we're making progress. And as I said, I don't want people to get a sense that crime's completely out of control. We're down in some areas like thefts from auto and auto theft, but we have some other challenges we're facing. So with that, I'm going to kind of just send it back to Councilman Friedson and his staff, and then we'll get the question and answer period started.
Okay, thank you, Commander Gagen. The first question that we have tonight was sent in anonymously, and I will read that now. My neighbor is telling people that a reorganized, more centralized Montgomery County 2nd District Traffic Unit has seen a reduction in officers from 40 to 26. Can you clarify whether the number of 2nd District police officers who actually patrol the neighborhood streets has decreased?
So I will answer, then I'll let Commander Gagen, because he's responsible for handling neighborhood complaints as it relates to traffic and the resources. But I want to give everyone sort of an overall view of, there was a refocus of our traffic unit, and I want to give everyone context to that. So back in July of last year, I basically created a centralized traffic unit. Each district had approximately 6 traffic officers that were responsible for their particular police district and handling traffic enforcement and other details within that district. As we continue to function in the Vision Zero context under the county executive's leadership, as well as really focusing on really targeted areas of hotspots, we say, with high collisions, high incidents of pedestrian incidents throughout the county, fatals. And one thing that's an interesting statistic here in Montgomery County is historically, we have more fatal collisions than we have homicides here in Montgomery County, which is unlike most jurisdictions that we border. So with that being said, that means to me that we needed to have a more centralized focus under one command in order to address this. So basically, we took the centralized motor units did not all come from the 2nd District. These were from all across the county. They became a centralized unit, but then we gave each district resources to handle traffic complaints within their districts. All of our patrol officers are also have the ability to handle traffic issues within their beats as well. So though they are, again, your first responders to the other types of calls for service and other responsibilities, they also have traffic enforcement responsibilities. So really what we do now is that we provide the centralized traffic unit to each of the district commanders, and we and the director of that division, the captain from the traffic division, will reach out to the district commander, basically provide him or her with the information about where the centralized traffic unit will be focusing on in their districts as it relates to hotspots. And so there is a constant communication. And should there be, Commander Gagen need any additional assistance from a traffic enforcement standpoint, they have the ability to communicate amongst themselves. So I'll turn it over to Commander Gagen to allow him to just discuss his strategies as he deals with community complaints about traffic. And just the centralized traffic unit is primarily responsible for major thoroughfares. So the other part of it is that we look at the focus of really trying to move traffic, particularly in rush hour traffic, AM and PM, as another strategy to assist with traffic issues within the county. So Commander Gagen.
Thank you, Chief. So as part of the reorganization, as the chief was just talking about, the second district was given 2 traffic complaint officers to basically kind of handle all of our neighborhood complaints. So anything that comes to me through either a phone call or from an email or just by word of mouth, those are my 2 officers that are solely dedicated to going out and handling those complaints in neighborhoods and other thoroughfares as appropriate. In addition to that, as the chief said, a lot of other complaints when we're talking about traffic related matters are given to my patrol officers and to the patrol ships that patrol our district. So if there is a complaint about a particular neighborhood or community within the district, I ask the beat cars that are responsible as part of our pledge with community policing to make sure that they're out there in handling that particular complaint, whether it be a stop sign. We've been dealing with a lot of different parking related complaints. So we're able to kind of still be able to handle all those different issues with the numbers that we have. But we're also cognizant of those bigger issues, on our major thoroughfares and that's where central traffic and the day and evening shifts come into play.
Thank you for those answers. Margaret Hadley, you are next. If you are ready, please unmute yourself and turn your camera on. And after we hear from Margaret, we will hear from Esther Wells. Margaret, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Andrew, for this tonight. I was interested to read about your bill to provide some money for security cameras for residents and businesses. Wondering if you have a sense of how likely it is to get funded. And then also, I'm kind of curious from the commander point of view, whether, and the chief point of view, whether you feel these security cameras are really effective in both preventing crimes and helping to find the perpetrators of the crimes. And congratulations on the primary election win.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I guess even I couldn't screw this one up, but thanks for the question. So the bill, just to clarify, I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. Work closely with Craig Reyes, who actually authored the bill. For those listening in tonight, Margaret is referencing a bill that sets up a program to provide grants to residents and businesses to be able to pay for part or all of security cameras, things like on your door or a security camera that's more significant on the commercial property. There's a lot of interest in purchasing these. Some residents can't afford them or have concerns about paying for them, and so this is a way to do that. Other jurisdictions, I believe DC is one, have similar programs like this that have been up and running. And the impetus behind it, I'll let the chief and commander speak more to this, since this is really a request, my understanding, that came from actually the mother of a victim of a violent crime, and the police and Councilmember Reyes, as the district council member there, working with the family, put this forward as a way to try to address it. But the challenge that we are seeing a lot is a lack of witnesses who are willing to speak with the police, which is a very alarming situation that is happening here in our county. And I've heard from colleagues in jurisdictions around the region and around the country, fear of retribution, fear of additional actions against victims. And in areas where there are not a lot of cameras, there's just not a lot of evidence for the police to work with. And so the goal here would be to provide more eyes, literally and figuratively, on areas to both mitigate crime on the front end. If you think something is going to be on camera, you might be less likely to commit the crime. But then when a crime does occur, if a victim is not willing to speak up, for understandable reasons, by the way, because they're scared and concerned for themselves, their families, maybe their friends, this would allow the police to just have one more tool. I don't think there are no silver bullets in public safety, but this is intended to provide just another tool. Before turning it over to the question of funding, we believe that there could be some outside funding available, and so we're going to be pursuing that, potentially federal or state funding through grants. And so we're going to work with the police department and work with our federal and state partners on that. But if not, I think that obviously we're stepping up to provide funding for a number of initiatives to address the public safety challenges that we're facing that have gotten worse even since the budget was passed. And I have no doubt that the council is willing and ready and able to step up with funds as necessary. The program does have to go through a process, including regulations that the police department will have to go through, and there's a public process as part of that, and some community stakeholder input as process, including consulting with victims. And so this is not something that, because we passed it yesterday, will be funded tomorrow necessarily, but I know everybody understands the urgency of being able to address these issues. So I'll turn it over to you, Chief, for any additional comments you have, because I know you work closely with Councilmember Reyes and with us on this program.
Absolutely, and thank you, Margaret, for the question as well. My belief is, I think what you noted about when the question you asked about whether these cameras will help to prevent crime, we have found evidence that is true in certain areas where we have that is very noticeable that cameras exist. But on the flip side of that, in a lot of locations, cameras are in many places in our society today in a variety of different ways. And we have had the opportunity in some areas that we've actually been able to actually solve crimes as a result of film footage that was recorded and then provided to the police department to help us to identify the very individuals involved in this. And much of this centers around the violent crime sort of discussion, but it goes to almost any crime trends that we see as a problem area. And there's some regulations that the council has placed on the police department that will be, transparent, reporting out to the communities to make sure that they are aware that these are the areas that we will be focusing on because of the interest of crime, not just for the fact. And I really don't have. The police department doesn't have the amount of personnel available in order to monitor any camera for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's not the gist of this program. it really does go to sort of the preventive modes, but it does lie to the fact that it allows people to provide footage that may not have been able to afford it, as an example, or in certain business areas where we need better sort of focus on events that are occurring out in the public eye. That's where a lot of this focus will be. So I think it will be truly beneficial to the county. I know the District of Columbia has done a very similar program, and all of what I've heard from Chief Conti and others there, they've noted to me that it's been very fruitful. So I expect to see the same type of results here in Montgomery County.
And I'll just offer my 2 cents on it as well. You know, I just mentioned in my opening about us being able to close out a residential burglary trend with auto thefts. Video from several residences in the impacted neighborhoods allowed us to identify a vehicle of interest, which ultimately led to my surveillance team being able to pick up on that vehicle, which led to the arrest. So they do work, and they have helped us quite a bit.
Thank you, Margaret. The next question I'm going to maybe read from Ann Coventry from the Wingate neighborhood, but Ann, I noticed that you are on here. If you can unmute yourself and put your camera on, you can ask your question yourself. Ann, are you there? Okay, well, I will read Ann's question. She sent it in advance. Again, she's from the Wingate neighborhood in Bethesda and is wondering if you would please address the pros and cons of our citizens association forming a neighborhood watch team versus hiring private security services.
So I can start. I can start on this one. So I really appreciate the question, and I understand people being concerned about crime in their neighborhood and their community. A great resource that I have here at the second district is my community services officer, Officer Dana Stroman. She has been a fixture here at the second district for 20 plus years. She's a wealth of information, and she's definitely my go-to person when we talk about being able to kind of work with the community, especially a neighborhood like Wingate, who's concerned about whether they should hire their own security based upon perceptions of crime, or whether they can work together to perform or kind of organize a neighborhood watch. There's a lot of costs that go along with hiring your own security, and a lot of liability. So it's one of those things, when talking about crime prevention. I mean, we oftentimes, we'll talk about, and I know there's some questions that are coming up here, about we offer tips to our community members, because we look at this as a partnership. So we want to make sure, that, hey, we're providing you all with the most beneficial information, and in return, we're asking you to try to help us as well. And I think one of the next steps, instead of going to the drastic measure of hiring your own security, would be to have a community meeting. I'd be happy to have either myself or one of my executives to attend. Along with Officer Stroman. We can talk a little bit more kind of, personally about the situation, about the crime in Wingate and some of your concerns. But I would say that we start there. Officer Stroman is excellent. She's can provide a lot more information about how to provide kind of, like how you organize into a neighborhood watch. So she would be the right person. I give you her number, or I can either give that to Matt to kind of send out in the chat, or I could just provide it over the air here. I don't know how everybody wants to go about doing that. maybe Cindy or somebody can.
Feel free to do both. If you want to do it, if you want to just say it here, and then Matt can also add in the chat. That's easier for folks, for anybody who missed it.
Sounds great. So Officer Stroman, this can go for anybody, and for anybody here who's representing a neighborhood or would just like a little bit more information. She can be reached at 240-773-6727. That's her office line. So she'd be happy to speak with you about different safety tips, crime prevention, neighborhood residential surveys, and anything related to public safety.
Thank you, Anne, for that question. The next question will be from Esther Wells. Esther, can you please turn your camera on and unmute yourself? Esther, go ahead when you're ready. Thanks.
Thank you, and hello everyone. Again, my name is Esther Wells, and I am a proud mom of 2 boys. My 9-year-old son, he has autism and ADHD. My question is if you can please describe the level of training our law enforcement officers are required to have for identifying and engaging with developmentally disabled or autistic members of our community, like my son. And then secondly, can you give us tips, family members tips on how we can help our DD residents have a positive experience during a high stress situation, for example, a traffic stop? Thank you.
Sure. So the first thing I would say, Esther, is that I'm very proud of our department and its work in the training and the identification of developmental and with individuals with disabilities, particularly centered around autism, but even beyond. We have an officer, her name is Officer Reyes. Officer Reyes is she's become I'm calling her a world-renowned trainer, and is often requested to go across the country to speak about what she's developed, the program that she's developed here for our department specifically, for our officers to be trained when they begin in recruit school, and then continuous training throughout their careers as they come back for mandated in-service training. We have not only making sure that when we're dealing with autistic children and adults, that officers are able to identify. We do significant training centered around that. We have had individuals who who've been committed to the program and such that we had an autistic young man that was our ambassador. His name was Jake, and Jake he's now I think Jake is now almost 20 years of age and has kind of moved on. And he told me he was he's too old to be the ambassador, but he wanted a new title. So we're going to give Jake a new title for helping our department. But he was a tremendous assistance in our role playing in those training, because he knew this would help other people in the community that we deal with. I have just begun we're at the very infant stages of having a committee that is associated to the police department, that we brought in individuals who have developmental disabilities. Many of them are adults who are part of the committee, along with their parents and some other experts, so that we can continue to have this dialogue about how police interact with individuals with disabilities. We also have extensive programming about Alzheimer's and dementia, as that is a major issue in Montgomery County as well. We have a significant resources that we put out whenever we have individuals who are missing, whether they are suffering from, that they are autistic, or whether they are not, or they are a dementia patient. And we put significant resources in our search teams in order to be able to individuals who have been trained again in knowing sort of the tendencies of these individuals and where they may go. And we've been very successful in finding individuals who have been lost or sort of run away, you may say, from their loved ones. So we have generally, before COVID, we had traditionally done an autism night at our training academy. We plan to have another one, and I'm hoping that maybe we can do it in the fall. We actually did it. We were on display at our community day that we did back in May at the fairgrounds, but we really want to have an event that's solely centered around autism, and we invite many people in the autism community to come, families to bring, and then we have discussions and provide these different outreach information that we can share and connect individuals so that there's constant dialogue about this and how we deal with these individuals that, again, who become adults at some point in their lives, who, and sometimes can be even in the driving population, right? We know they're being placed in the general working environment. So we can encounter them in a variety of different ways. And so these trainings, I think, allow us to help us to understand, as well as the other side to understand what the police will do in certain situations, how that's handled. So our officers are trained for a traffic stop. If they may, identify an individual who may have autism, then they will then should revert to their training of how to calm the situation, de-escalate, in order to make the person as calm as possible should we encounter them on a traffic stop. And I would just say, to anyone, to just the advice I would give is that the officers, again, they have body-worn cameras. They're going to have the body-worn cameras on, but just to be as calm as possible and provide and listen to the officers to what they're asking them to do for them. And I think that we will see much success from that perspective as we move forward. So we continue to try to learn. We don't believe that we're the true experts of it all, but that's why we want to invite people from the communities into those discussions, to be part of those committees in order to help us be better in our interactions with individuals, as I've discussed. So thank you for that great question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther. Thanks for being here. And thank you, Chief Jones. Okay, the next person up is Phil Petrilli. Phil, go ahead, unmute yourself and turn your camera on.
I think I'm unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for letting me speak here. Andrew, you and I have exchanged a number of tweets and emails. I've been a victim of a serious crime. My car was stolen from in front of my house on March 8th. Both keys were inside my house. There is no valet key in the car for this type of model. We are dealing with really serious criminals. And this is a problem, quite honestly. I've lived in my neighborhood for over 2 decades. And for 2 decades, I've experienced multiple car break-ins, which escalated to, originally it was unlock cars, steal petty coins, things in the cars. It escalated into people breaking windows. And now it's escalated into them just stealing the car. And they have the technology to do it. I've routinely asked for more patrols in our neighborhood, most recently after the theft of my car on March 8th. For about a 2-week period, there were patrols around 8:30 to 10:30 at night. These crimes don't occur at 8:30 to 10:30 at night. They occur at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So those patrols don't come through our neighborhoods at these hours. This is not a complaint about our police. Chief Jones, Commander Gagen, I'm your biggest fans. Andrew, I feel like Montgomery County, number one, is extremely soft on crime. The story about this recent activity with these folks that were burglarizing the homes, were chased, shot at the police. One of those individuals was released, I think, within 24 hours after being apprehended. What are you doing to A, make sure that accountability is not diversion programs? If people commit these crimes, they have to do serious time. And two, what are you doing so that Commander Gagen doesn't have 2 traffic officers responding to this stuff at the middle of the night? How are we going to get him and Chief Jones more resources to get more officers on the streets so that they can not just respond when the crimes have been committed, but so that they can be in these areas where these crimes are routinely being committed and be a preventative influence? So the
Thank
question
you.
goes to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Petrilli.
Appreciate the question. A couple things. The accountability question. I mean, I've shared this with you. I'll share it again. I believe that people should be, held accountable, and they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I will note that the county council has no role in determining what those penalties and punishments are. Criminal laws are state laws or federal sometimes, but generally what you're talking about, the criminal code is state. The county has county ordinances, and the decisions on when and whether to prosecute are done by the state's attorney. So I appreciate the concern. I share some of the concerns that you also have, but I don't know that one of the reasons you think that I'm not answering your question specifically is that you're asking for views and specifically what I would do to make sure that some of those crimes have harsher penalties, or that the penalties are inflicted more frequently. And that's not really a decision that is before the county council. Those are prosecutorial decisions, and their state laws for what criminal acts have what appropriate penalties. In terms of providing the resources to the police department, certainly we're all concerned, not just in the budget, but in the recruiting classes. I mean, this is a real serious challenge that we have. It's not necessarily the amount of money that's budgeted per year. In fact, we approved more than $296 million to the police department this year. It was a 4.5% increase year over year. It's the largest that we have had to date. But we have a recruiting class that is far less than the amount of budgeted positions that we have. We've in this budget increased police pay. We have added to the cadet program, all the things that you and I have talked about via Twitter, but it's a real challenge. Our police department isn't the only police department that faces recruiting challenges, but certainly our police department faces some significant recruiting challenges, and it's something that I'm concerned about. I know others are concerned about, and I think we need to continue to address it. But we are working on it. We have
What are
worked
you
on it,
doing?
that's reflected in the budget. I just explained to you what the budget was, but ultimately, the decisions of when, how, and what the penalties will be are ultimately decisions that the state's attorney makes, and judges, and at times jury. But I think appreciate the question and your engagement reaching out to our office.
And if I could, again, I appreciate the support, Mr. Petrilli, but at the same time, I mean, when we talk about where I direct resources, that ultimately, that's the accountability falls on me, as to where I'm putting my folks. So it's one of those things that I try to pay close attention to where crime is occurring, the type of crime, I try to make sure that, hey, look, I'm following trends, and if there's a series of issues that are occurring in a particular location, that's where I try to direct my resources. So it is a challenge, as you pointed out, and with the numbers coming down. But at the same time, I don't want anybody to come away with the fact that we're down right at this moment overall with our department's sworn complement. I would not say that we're in a position where we cannot quickly address a particular trend or situation. And in your community, your neighborhood, when we saw what was occurring, where it went from that theft from auto and the stolen car, now it was going into residential burglary. You say, that you didn't see the patrol cars at night. Well, sometimes some of that is because now I have a surveillance team that has unmarked vehicles. So I have other assets that I try to put in play. But your point is very well made. I have asked, as part of our comprehensive plan, to try to address the concerns of the community, to make sure that my midnight cars are paying more attention to that area down along the DC line, to include your community. So if you're not seeing that, you feel free to reach out to me, and we'll address it again.
Thank you very.
Thank you, Commander Gagen. I think our next question is from Tara Van Toy. Tara, you can unmute yourself, and I apologize if I mispronounced your last name. Put your camera on. Tara, are you there? I will read her question, and if she joins us, she can jump in. Tara's question was, in terms of public safety, does your office do anything to protect people, especially seniors, from online scams and hackers?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'll take this one, and then I'll turn it over to the police, because this is kind of a joint effort here. I will say we have a really great Office of Consumer Protection in Montgomery County. It is in many ways unique for a local jurisdiction to have an Office of Consumer Protection. They do a really good job proactively of reaching out and educating. And in fact, we have partnered with them. And I have specifically, before the pandemic, we have hosted and co-hosted, most recently with Emily Shetty in Kensington, events to discuss with seniors specifically about scams. They proactively put out releases to inform the public of scams that are occurring. And they also work very closely with the state Office of the Attorney General Consumer Protection Division to address a lot of those issues. Of course, some of these are police investigations. I'll turn it over to the police on how they handle these and what they do proactively to reach out to residents to avoid scams. But we do in Montgomery County have an Office of Consumer Protection, which most jurisdictions do not have at the local level, which specifically attempts to address this. But of course, it is very difficult for any jurisdiction, any office, to keep ahead of the scammers that get more and more sophisticated and become more and more challenging to catch. As soon as you figure out what a scam is, they move on, oftentimes, unfortunately, to the next scam, and they prey on vulnerable residents and oftentimes, especially our older adult population. I'll just note, sorry, that Matt has put in the chat the Office of Consumer Protection information that's there, so you can check it out there. But with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Jones if he has anything else to add, or Commander Gagen.
Sure, I'll just add rather quickly. There's a couple of things that we do focus on with seniors, and many of the district stations, to include the 2nd District that Commander Gagen oversees with his community service officer, really deals with a lot of senior living outreach. We have a senior program that not only do we do it through our district stations, but we also have a program within our volunteer resources section for the police department that actually does some significant programming along the way to help seniors, to prevent them from being victims of online scams and other scams that that we know is a tendency that does exist. And this has been a problem throughout our community for some time. And many of these scam artists just get more complicated, get more really complex than many ways in which they do things. And so the more information that we can share through those particular resources, the better it is. We do take all of these online scams very seriously. Anything that we find that is a fraud, that's people, for example, who might, their bank accounts may have been impacted or whatever, we also will handle those cases through our fraud section. And we've been able to help many seniors recover some funds that, and sometimes all of their funds, where they have been scammed out of in these types of cases. So very unfortunate, but I will tell you that we are fully committed to helping. And if there's anything that we need to do by showing up at a particular location and doing a presentation, we encourage you all to reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to do that.
Terrific. We had one quick anonymous question for Chief Jones or Commander Gagen, asking, are Ring doorbells a deterrent to crime? And after that, we will go to Seth Miller.
Sure. So real quick, that kind of goes towards, I think, what earlier the discussion that we had about about video. The majority of our video that we get from neighborhoods comes from Ring doorbell or other variations, other companies that are doing similar. So they are, everybody's kind of grown more accustomed to, there's cameras everywhere in the world now, and every place you go there's a camera. That's sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. But what it does, for us in law enforcement and for our investigators, is it does help us oftentimes piece together, or particular crime, how an individual or individuals got into a neighborhood, if it was a vehicle or some other conveyance. And at the same time, it also helps us to get a better idea of the suspect, the description of that individual, so that we can share that. We oftentimes put video out through our PIO or through Nextdoor.
Okay, thank you. Seth, are you ready to turn your camera on and unmute yourself? Go ahead if you are and ask your question. After Seth, if we have time, we will go to Matt Gorman, and that will probably be the last question.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. First, thank you for your service. Chief Jones, you had said something interesting about crime having no boundaries. I think that's interesting. You'd also talked about deterrent. I was a patient at Potomac Valley Nursing and Wellness as a result of an infection for a surgical wound. I was put into a room with 3 other men my first night, and one of them got up and battered a paraplegic. I demanded police contact. The nurse didn't want to call the police. The next night, I saw the same roommate. I heard through the curtain the same roommate slapped by a staffer. I pulled out my phone and called the police. When I was discharged, I was balance billed over $10,000, which insurance quickly took care of. That $10,000 is very relevant because the state of Maryland fined that same facility over $100,000 for deaths caused by COVID and some of the actions by the staff members. The fact pattern is very simple. First, they had COVID positives. They chose not to isolate known COVID positives. They continued to accept negatives. Of those accepted negative, 10 contracted COVID, 3 died. I'm just a peon paralegal, where I was before the accident that started this chain of events. But my understanding is manslaughter is causing the death of another through negligence. Negligence is a breach of a duty of care. I've been lobbying your office for over 1.5 years to bring charges. I feel nobody would no reasonable person would hold me responsible. But I feel if I'd screamed louder about the attacks on Brian, like those deaths might have been prevented. And I know that, if we don't go after people who do really awful things like this, it's not going to provide a deterrent that you were talking about. Why is it that your office hasn't gotten back to me about my complaints about the deaths at Potomac Valley? Actually, you guys have, but some of the responses I've gotten were, if you're not next of kin, you have no standing to bring complaint. That's kind of scary if you have to be next of kin to bring complaint, because that means somebody could do something wrong. They also said that the Maryland Department of Health had to ask your office to investigate. At the time, Office of Healthcare Quality's Deputy Executive Director for Long-Term Care was a guy named David Sherry. He was there less than a year. When I called him to ask about his qualifications, he said he felt threatened that I asked about his qualifications. I mean, I don't know why we can't go after people that are causing the death of vulnerable non-money parties for pecuniary gain. It makes me sick that this is happening in the county that I love and I grew up in. I'm sorry if I'm animated. First Amendment.
So, Mr. Miller, I have responded to several of your inquiries in response to this. And we have, though none of them have stated what you have stated has been my reply, but I will state this. First and foremost, as it relates to the incident, you proclaim that the individual slapped another. We as the police have no authority to make an arrest in a misdemeanor event that we did not see in our presence. So from that perspective, we would have not come in and made an arrest in that situation for the first place. And second of all, as it relates to about your complaint about the nursing home being negligent, that is not the responsibility of the police department. And there is and you have been referred to the regulatory groups that are responsible for handling anything that is outside of the norm as it relates to the neglect of patients, as it relates to that handling of that. The final authority really rests with, from a standpoint, if a death investigation is requested by our department, which in that particular case it was not. We do not handle deaths such as that. That would be handled again through the state of Maryland, through the Attorney General's office. And then they would have the authority, or maybe in partnering with the state's attorney's office, in order to prosecute anybody that they would deem to have committed such an offense. So again, this is not a police matter. It is more at a regulatory matter that deals with nursing homes, which is not the oversight of the police based upon the circumstances which you have explained to me.
Thank you, Chief Jones. Okay, since time is running tight right now, we will go straight to Matt Gorman. That'll probably be the last question. For those of you that did send in other questions, we will do our best to get back to you. If you want to add your contact information in the chat, that might be helpful as well. And somebody on our staff will be sure to get back to you. Go ahead, Matt.
You were very nice, Chief, to handle that last question. Longtime resident, grew up in Kenwood, just sold the house 3 years ago off of Western Avenue. I think it was Commander talked about Dana Stroman. She's awesome. I remember her when I had a house for 29 years on Bayard Boulevard behind the Western Market. I know you're understaffed, and I've talked to Councilman Friedson. I love the police. I respect the police, but just want to throw out, if you can come by Friendship Heights a little more often, we'd appreciate it. I have very much empathy for the homeless and the mentally ill, understandably, because there's a Whole Foods and a Starbucks. They need to use the restroom where there's food or things around there. But I'm a little concerned that at some point that it'll escalate. I've come upon a man defecating in public, and one morning I walked by a sleeping bag with a bowl full of urine right at the Microsoft building on the plaza level there. So again, I know you're understaffed. Everybody that's been on this call has asked you to come patrol their neighborhood, but I wanted to throw in a vote for Friendship Heights. Thank you.
So, Matt, thank you so much. And I just spent some time typing a response to you. I didn't realize that you were going to be able to ask your question. I'll just throw in there that we have oftentimes over the last 3 years since I've been the commander here in the 2nd District, we have increased our police presence down in the Friendship Heights area. in regards to, as I talked about often throughout the night, about increases in crime. And to your point, we have seen an uptick in a number of different issues down that area. I was just talking with one of my executives, and we're putting together another comprehensive plan to increase our presence down in that location to address some of those issues. When it comes to the homeless issue, we oftentimes work very closely with our partners and Health and Human Services here in the county, along with the crisis center, to try to address the ever growing homeless population, unfortunately, that's making their way into the county. So that would be one of those types of situations. We would love to be able to make contact with those individuals and to try to get them into in contact with members from the outreach program from Health and Human Services. Great, thank you.
Well, I think I'm going to close this out here, Cindy, if that's okay with you. I really want to, first of all, acknowledge the police department's work with not just HHS, Health and Human Services, but also local organizations, including Bethesda Cares. These are not easy issues to deal with, but our police in the 2nd District in particular really do a really admirable job of working with our Health and Human Services and our outside partner organizations to address them. I've been out doing street outreach with officers and with Bethesda Cares, and it is really challenging. And I just wanted to note how well I think that partnership and coordination works. It's not perfect, but it works better here than in most other places, frankly. Thank you to Chief Jones. Thank you to Commander Gagen. I just want to note we have a really strong working relationship. Chief Jones, I can reach out to. He always answers. We have a really good relationship, and Commander Gagen in the 2nd District in particular, we are in constant and regular communication when issues arise, and noted by the fact that in April he was in person doing a public safety focused town hall. Unfortunately, we thought that was for a temporary rise in crime. It has sustained. That's why we're here tonight doing this. He was with us for our last in-person town hall before that was separated by a pandemic in the middle, where we had moved exclusively to virtual. So a mainstay in our community conversations and also just a regular presence. When you reach out to us, we reach out immediately to them. And when there are concerns in your neighborhood, we raise it. And yes, there are limited resources. Yes, there are competing priorities, but they do what they can to be responsive. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, appreciate that. It is a challenging time right now for all of us. Crime is up, and it's deeply concerning for all of us, for our neighbors, for our families. And it's not an easy time to be a police officer and to run police departments and to run district command. And I just wanted to make sure that I took this opportunity to thank you, not just for joining us tonight, but for everything you do to keep us safe. And I will just close, because we didn't get a chance to turn to Gigi Godwin of the Montgomery County Chamber, but she did note, and I want to make sure that I acknowledge, Officer Lori Reyes did receive the 2022 Public Safety Outstanding Leadership Award by the Chamber. It's a wonderful recognition each year that the Chamber does to acknowledge our public safety heroes. And Lori Reyes is cream of the crop and really is a model for all of us. I've seen her work firsthand in dealing with issues and in communicating with residents. I've watched her train and see how she works with other officers and the respect that she has. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. I thank you all for coming. We share your concern. We're here to help. We put, again, the ways to stay in touch with our office here in the chat. We're here, we're available, we do our best to get back to you, and we have an open line of communication with the 2nd District and with the Montgomery County Police Department, the chief, the commander on down, and we really appreciate that. We appreciate you, and we hope you'll stay safe, be vigilant, and reach out to us if there are any concerns. And before we close, thank you to Cindy for moderating. Thank you to my team, Angie, Angela, and Matt, for all of their work in putting this on. And I hope everybody has a safe and enjoyable evening, and we look forward to seeing everybody soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.